Good morning, comic book fans. Welcome back to Comics in 5 Minutes. I am your brother, Shorty. And we're looking at a brand new one from Mad Cave Studios. And this is like a bit of a big deal because for people who haven't been paying attention, there was a whole thing with Diamond Distribution going under, and a whole bunch of trading agreements and shipping agreements all had to be resorted out through DUK, Diamond UK. And Mad Cave Studios as a company didn't quite make it the cut. They have now gone back into stuff we can get from Diamond UK. This is the first thing we've had from them in months, and I was hugely excited to get anything from them because I am a fan. I have got a whole bunch of their stuff in my own personal collection, and I've rated and reviewed and put stuff into best of the year lists because they have an eye for talent and do really good things. Now, I kind of ordered this one just blindly. I'm not going to lie, I didn't really know much about what was going on. I very rarely read blurbs. I prefer just to give shit a try and see how it plays out. I was fairly sure it would be Roman because it's called Circus Maximus. Like, that was a fairly solid bet on my part. And I know what you're thinking. There was this whole thing a while ago about how many men think about the Roman Empire, and yeah, I kind of do. Well, I did to a certain degree. I am a historian. I have got my degree in history. I've spent like quite a bit of time writing blogs about real historical weaponry and warfare tactics and how they apply to tabletop role-playing games, and the Romans did come up in that one. So yeah, I've got to say, I know little bits about it, but it's not like my massive interest. I'm far more into the Wild West or Victorian stuff. But I knew enough that it's like, this could be an interesting little thing. Let's see how it plays out. And what surprised me was that it was a heist story, a revenge heist. And I'm not going to lie, there's genuinely no part of my brain thought that's what this was going to be. And I'm not saying it's an impossible thing or they've chosen something so wildly out there, but if you asked me to pick two different genres and how they would mash together in a comic book, I don't think I'd go for Ancient Roman Empire revenge heist. I just don't think that would have occurred to me, and probably because the idea of revenge heists don't really interest me that much. I'm okay with like Ocean's 11, 13 to a lesser degree, but it's not something I've gone out of my way to find. And I think it's because there's a few things within that genre that are like defining of it which don't really work for me. The getting the gang together kind of scene. And I talk about this when I talk about like non-high stuff, superhero team-up comic books. I find an entire issue of getting the team together just to be a waste of an issue. You also throw in the fact that for a heist movie, particularly to be successful, you're generally going to have some twists and turns and some backstabbing and some unexpected things happen. But they're so part of the genre that the people engaging with the media are going to expect something like that to happen. So the people creating it are going to have to go further and further into the realms of there's absolutely no way anyone would see this coming, which takes away from the idea of like, well, then you're just either lying to us or you're not telling us the whole story until that point. And I things I just don't like about it. In this particular case, though, I've got to say it did stand up just a little bit more for me. Starting with artistry, really, really nice, bold work, fantastic lines, understanding of light and shadow really effectively, and it's simple and bold at the same time. There's never any, or not too much anyway, extraneous detail thrown into to the background shots. There is some, obviously, that don't just do the whole fading into bland grayscale computer-generated colouring when they don't have too much background information, but they have stuff in there. And it works because the line work is so bold that it feels like too much detail would make the page look too busy. There's a rather wonderful shot of the city from above, which, if anything, rather than being like that immaculate three-point perspective, heavily detailed stuff that I really, really like most of the time, it feels more from the angle we're seeing it from that it is an ancient map of the city, and I think that works really effectively for it. In terms of story, it does play around with some things that interest me that aren't just heist. We have this relationship between slave and owner, which is very, very different in the Roman Empire than it is through what was during chattel slavery, but it's still worth talking about. We still have these ideas of it would be totally fine for a male slave owner to have sexual relations with a woman, but a female slave owner to have relations with a male would be considered sexual assault on the part of the slave. There's stuff like that which plays quite nicely. There is one thing which made me raise an eyebrow to a certain degree, though, because if you're going to base something historically, you've got to look at sources and biases, and one of the things that I do know about an awful lot of Roman empires is the most salacious information that survives mostly was done by people who wrote it after they were toppled because you wanted them to look bad to justify why they were toppled. So whenever we see in contemporary culture this idea of like, oh, all these Roman emperors were absolutely terrible, despicable human beings who did horrible things with goats, you have to have like a little bit of a, well, how much of that was actually true and how much was it people after the fact changing history or changing recorded events to try to make out that they were justified in toppling an empire. I don't know how much of this is going to be 100% accurate, but at least it was interesting, and it wasn't just a standard kind of heist. And it's only issue 1. Who knows? We could have some amazing twists later on, which actually interests me. Who knows? That's it for me for now, though. Until I see you all again, look after you, everyone. Stay safe. Bye!